Journal entry, October 23rd, 2024. There are three main areas, fields, parts, or components to magic. But before I delve into that, I find myself in a high street cafe, waiting for breakfast, reflecting on a conversation I had here just a few weeks ago with a mundane friend, someone who had recently discovered my more occult interests. Let's call him Mr. H. He was completely gobsmacked by the revelation. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone as rational as me could be into all that, and naturally, he wanted to hear more. This is a common reaction from mundanes when they find out about the deeper side of your life. You almost become a source of entertainment for them, something intriguing and strange. I've spoken with other practitioners who've had the same experience, and it makes sense. Their lives are so devoid of magic that when they're confronted with someone who practices it, they become fascinated. But here's the thing. Despite their interest, I'd wager that about 90% of these people will never attempt to walk the path, and even fewer would actually get anywhere if they tried. They may ask questions, probe into the mystery, and express awe, but in the end, magic isn't something they'll ever truly understand. Their fascination stops at the surface, like a collector of rare art who locks their pieces away in a vault, never truly appreciating them for their depth or meaning. This analogy to art collectors strikes me as fitting. In the art world, there are people who curate collections, spending vast sums of money on works that will never see the light of day. It's an investment to them, nothing more. The question is, do these collectors deserve the art? Do they appreciate its soul, its beauty, the intention behind each stroke of the brush? I doubt it. But they have the money, and in that world, that's all that matters. Similarly, mundanes who peer into the world of magic don't truly deserve a seat at the table. They are allowed only as much insight into our practice as we choose to give them. In my experience, sharing the magical world with a mundane feels like showing an ancient manuscript to someone who can't read. They may admire it for its age or rarity, but they can't understand its meaning or value. They can't connect with it the way we do, and more importantly, they never will. That's the challenge with people like Mr. They see magic as a curiosity, something fantastical but removed from their everyday existence. They don't recognize that magic is a living, breathing force that shapes reality, or that it's an art form we've dedicated our lives to mastering. I love magic, the art and practice of it, and that passion runs deep. But it's not something easily shared with those who don't live and breathe it the way I do. I don't mean to sound elitist, but there's a certain frustration in seeing people treat magic like a novelty or a parlor trick. They can't grasp the weight of what we do, and in truth, I wouldn't want most of them to. There's something sacred about the mysteries we hold, and not everyone is worthy of touching that sacredness. Magic is, at its core, a mystery. I've often described it as the mechanisms and mechanics behind how religion actually works, the unseen cogs and gears, an unrevealed science waiting to be understood. It's like the ocean in the old world. There were maps, but much of it was still myth and legend. And then, when we thought we had a solid grasp on the known world, the new world was discovered, or rediscovered, depending on how you look at it. Magic works the same way. It's a vast umbrella of knowledge and experiences, but to the average person, it's dismissed as woo-woo, a cauldron and some silly made-up words. They see only the superficial image of it, never realizing there's so much more under the surface. I have to admit, I was a bit offended when Mr. H called me a fraud. But then again, I understand where he's coming from. To him, magic seems unreal or trickery because he lacks the understanding of what it really is. When he asked me what magic actually is and how I would teach it, I explained as I often do. Magic is a vehicle. It's a set of practices and a mindset that opens us up to possibilities beyond what we perceive as normal. It lets us explore and interact with forces and concepts that the human mind isn't built to fully comprehend. Anyone who's walked the magical path will tell you that the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper. There's no end to the discoveries. We do our best to understand these new territories, but some things, like multi-dimensional realities, are enough to make even the sanest person go mad. This is why areas of magic like witchcraft are so valuable. Witchcraft at its heart is practical. If you spend all your time exploring these impossible supernatural landscapes, what do you really have to show for it? Sure, some might say the journey is enough and it makes life worth living, but how does that help others? Witchcraft grounds us. It's practical in its approach. Yes, we explore the unimaginable and the unknown, but always with a practical application in mind. If we're going to learn about different levels of consciousness, we want to gain a skill from it. If we're astral traveling, the question isn't just whether we can get there, but what can we do once we're there? That's the common sense approach to magic. And that's what separates a true practitioner from someone who just wants to explore endlessly without purpose. Mr. H seemed to understand this approach when I explained it, but where he got lost and what seemed to bother him was when he asked me about magical potions, and I spoke of penicillin. To him, magic should be some grand, mysterious concoction that glows in the dark and grants mystical powers. But I explained to him that magic also includes the everyday, the miracles we take for granted. Penicillin, when first discovered, was magic, healing powers from mold. The alchemy behind it was no less magical because it now fits into the realm of science. It's this overlap between what is magical and what is mundane that mundanes often struggle to grasp. As I mentioned earlier, magic, particularly spellwork, functions on three distinct yet interconnected levels: psychological, physiological, and energetic. When Mr. H and I discussed this, he quickly pointed to the placebo effect, insisting that if something works, it's probably just the placebo at play. It's a common enough idea these days, especially among those who don't dig deeper. While the psychological aspect of magic is important, just as we know prayer can help patients recover faster in hospitals, the mistake Mr. H made was assuming that's the whole story. What he missed were the other two layers that complete the picture. It's not just psychology, belief, or even a deity's intervention. Sometimes it's all of these combined, and often it's much more. Mr. H was particularly uncomfortable when I began talking about the ancient Egyptians and their magical rituals, which perfectly blended all three components. For the Egyptians, magic wasn't just a matter of belief or mental conditioning. Their rituals engaged the unconscious mind, using specific psychological techniques designed to tap into deeper levels of awareness and influence. When a magical ritual is done properly, it's about more than just saying the right words or believing something will happen. It's about working with the mind in a way that aligns it with the task at hand. They understood that you had to tame and direct the unconscious mind, a task most people today have little patience for. But magic doesn't stop with the mind. There's also the physiological aspect, another layer that modern people often forget. In ancient times, magic frequently involved potions, medicines, and psychoactive substances that had direct effects on the body. The line between what we now call medicine and magic was blurred for much of human history. Certain herbs or concoctions would induce altered states of consciousness or help to heal the body, allowing the practitioner to act more effectively on both the mental and physical levels. These physiological tools were just as much a part of magic as the psychological rituals, and they're still relevant today, though we often call them by different names now. The third piece of the puzzle is the energetic level. This is the one most people today associate with magic, the elusive woo-woo aspect that deals with manipulating unseen forces. Many modern practitioners focus almost exclusively on this aspect, thinking magic is all about directing energies, summoning forces, and working in the spiritual realms. And yes, it's a significant part of the work, but it's only one of the three. What makes ancient magical practices like those of the Egyptians so powerful was their ability to combine the psychological, physiological, and energetic elements into one cohesive whole. There's a rush today to separate science, magic, and religion, as if they're entirely distinct fields. But if you really want to understand how magic works, you need to see them as complementary. Each one is a piece of the larger puzzle. You could approach a problem with just one method. A counselor might use psychological techniques to treat depression. A medical doctor might prescribe drugs for the same condition, or an energy healer might perform Reiki or another form of energetic balancing. But a true magical practitioner will work on all three levels simultaneously, addressing the mind, the body, and the energy field. That's what sets magic apart from these other approaches. It works holistically. A proper spell or ritual doesn't rely on just the mind, or just the body, or just energy work. It ties them together, weaving a net that captures all aspects of the problem. When you can work on all three levels, that's where the real power lies.